My name is Daniel. I'm 48 years old. For the past 10 years, I lived in a sun-bleached suburb of Arizona with my wife, Lisa, and her son, Kyle. The house had a pool shaped like a kidney bean and a patio that baked under the desert sky. It was technically hers. Her name on the deed. Her signature on the closing papers. My money in every wall. I paid the mortgage. Every month. Insurance. Property tax. Utilities. The pool maintenance contract. Landscaping. Pest control. Kyle's tuition. His registration fees. His sports academy dues. The elite one with professional coaches and glossy brochures promising scholarships. I paid his medical bills when he broke his wrist during practice. I paid for gas. I paid for the car insurance on the SUV he drove like he owned it. I covered streaming subscriptions, phone plans, new laptops when old ones were too slow. I never kept a tally in front of them, but I kept one in my head. Not out of bitterness, out of survival. I never insisted Kyle call me dad. I never pushed the word stepfather into conversations. I told myself respect earned slowly would be stronger than any title demanded quickly. I believed that consistency would build something permanent. That presence mattered more than blood. I worked long hours. Some weeks I barely saw daylight outside my office windows. I took on extra contracts without complaint. When Lisa said the dishwasher was acting up, I fixed it. When the AC groaned in July, I replaced it before it died completely. When Kyle needed new cleats because the old pair were embarrassing, I bought the better brand. I told myself this is what stability looks like. But stability without acknowledgement becomes invisible. Kyle never openly rebelled. That would have been easier. Open hostility has edges you can push against. Instead, he mastered dismissal. Short answers. No eye contact. That subtle smirk teenagers use when they want you to know you're temporary. He introduced me once to a group of his friends at the mall. "This is my mom's husband," he said. Not even a pause. Not even hesitation. Lisa didn't correct him. That was the first crack. There were others. Holiday cards addressed to Lisa and Kyle Thompson. His biological father's last name. Mine absent, as if I were a guest who overstayed. When I asked about it, Lisa laughed lightly. "It's just easier that way." Easier for whom? Kyle's father drifted in and out like a seasonal storm. He'd show up around Christmas with expensive gifts and loud stories. A new phone, designer sneakers, tickets to a game. Then he'd disappear again, no tuition payments, no dentist appointments, no discipline. And yet, in Kyle's eyes, that man was the real one. I was maintenance. The slow erosion didn't happen all at once. It happened in glances, in tone, in the way decisions were discussed around me but not with me. When Kyle started talking about transferring to a more prestigious private school, I knew what that meant financially. I had already run the numbers privately. I always did. The cookout was supposed to be simple. Neighbors, burgers, the smell of chlorine and charcoal mixing in the air, laughter echoing off stucco walls. Kyle had just finished his sophomore year. Everyone was congratulating Lisa on raising such a promising young man. Raising. I stood by the grill, flipping meat I had paid for, listening to plans for his future. Private academy, higher tuition, better exposure for college scouts. They were talking about it like money was background noise. I waited for a natural opening. When it came, I stepped in carefully. "Maybe we should compare the programs first," I said calmly. "Make sure the added cost actually aligns with long-term goals." It wasn't criticism. It was logic. Lisa didn't even look at me when she responded. "You don't get a vote," she said flatly. "He's not your son." Conversations nearby stalled. A fork clinked against a plate. Someone cleared their throat. Kyle leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, enjoying the moment. "You're just the ATM around here," he added, rolling his eyes. "Don't get comfortable." A couple of nervous laughs fluttered across the table. Then everyone pretended to focus on their food. I smiled. "That's the detail that won't leave me." I smiled. I nodded as if it were harmless banter. I turned back to the grill like nothing had shifted. But inside, Something collapsed with surgical precision. They hadn't spoken in anger. That would have implied emotion. This was casual, matter of fact, established truth. You don't get a vote. You're just the ATM. I replayed the last 10 years in seconds. The early mornings, the overtime, the silent pride when Kyle made varsity, the relief when bills were paid on time, the quiet hope that one day he would see me not as an obligation, but as an anchor. And suddenly I saw it clearly. I wasn't building respect. I was funding indifference. Lisa didn't defend me. Not publicly. Not privately later that evening. She brushed it off when the guests left. "He's a teenager," she said. "Don't take it so seriously." But it wasn't teenage cruelty that unsettled me. It was her certainty. You don't get a vote. That wasn't Kyle speaking. That was structure. That was hierarchy. That was me being placed deliberately outside the circle. I went to bed that night and stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly above us. Lisa fell asleep quickly. Kyle's bedroom light stayed on late, music humming faintly through the walls. I lay there calculating more than finances. If I had no vote, I had no authority. If I had no authority, I had no responsibility. The imbalance had always been there. I had just refused to see it. I had mistaken access for belonging, provision for partnership, endurance for respect. The cookout didn't create the fracture. It revealed it. Standing there in the fading Arizona heat, smoke rising around me, I understood something with cold clarity. They had already decided who I was. The only thing left undecided was whether I would continue accepting it. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, not sadness, resolution. That same night, I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I did not demand an apology. I did not replay the cookout in front of them like a prosecutor building a case. Silence is more powerful when you know exactly what it means. Lisa went to bed as if nothing had happened. She brushed her teeth, checked her phone, set her alarm. She didn't look at me when she slipped under the sheets. The house was quiet, the kind of suburban quiet that pretends everything inside is stable. Kyle laughed in his room, headset on, playing games with friends. I heard his voice through the wall. "Yeah, he tried to tell us what school to pick," he said at one point. "Like he gets a say." More laughter. I sat at the kitchen table alone. The pool light cast blue reflections across the ceiling. The refrigerator hummed. My laptop sat closed in front of me. For 10 years, that machine had been the control center of this household. Transfers, payments, insurance renewals, tuition confirmations, infrastructure. I opened it slowly. No anger, no shaking hands, just clarity. The first thing I did was open my banking portal. I stared at the list of automatic payments, neat rows of quiet obedience. Mortgage, private school tuition, sports academy annual fee, health insurance premium, credit line covering educational expenses. I remembered Kyle's voice. "You're just the ATM." Fine. ATMs can be turned off. I transferred a significant portion of my liquid savings into a separate account under my name only, an account I had opened years ago but never used fully. I moved funds carefully, legally, leaving records clean and traceable. Then I began removing my name from shared obligations. Autopay for tuition disabled. Insurance, cancellation request submitted. Secondary card on my credit line, deactivated. Shared subscription accounts, closed or transferred. Each click was quiet, final. There was no sabotage, no illegal maneuvering. Everything documented, everything within my rights. If I had no vote, I had no duty to finance decisions I wasn't allowed to influence. Around midnight, Lisa stirred and came into the kitchen for water. She paused when she saw the glow of the laptop. "You're still up?" she asked. "Yeah." She waited for more. There was none. She nodded and went back to bed. That was the moment I understood something else. She assumed my compliance was permanent. That no matter what was said publicly, I would continue underwriting the structure of her life. I closed the laptop at 12:43 a.m. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt balanced. The next morning unfolded normally. Coffee, shower, work emails. Kyle left for practice without acknowledging me. Lisa kissed me on the cheek before heading to her office job. Routine masks everything. 48 hours later, the first tremor hit. Kyle came home earlier than usual, backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder. His expression was irritated, not yet alarmed. "School says tuition payment didn't go through," he said, tossing the notice onto the counter. "Can you fix it?" I looked at the paper. I already knew its contents. "I won't be fixing that," I replied calmly. He frowned. "What?" Lisa walked in seconds later, drawn by tone alone. She picked up the notice and scanned it quickly. "This must be a mistake," she said. "Daniel." "No mistake." The word landed heavier than I expected. Kyle's posture changed. "What do you mean, no mistake?" "I mean the payments have stopped." Silence. Not loud. Not explosive. Just the kind that widens rooms. Lisa's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why would you do that?" I met her gaze evenly. "Because I don't get a vote." Her face flushed. "Daniel, that was just words." I finished quietly. "Words repeated for years." Kyle scoffed. "Are you seriously being dramatic about a joke?" I stood, slowly. "If I'm not his father," I said to Lisa, keeping my voice level, "then I'm not financially responsible for his future." Kyle laughed once. Sharp, disbelieving. "You can't just stop paying. I have classes. Then your father can step in." That hit him harder than I expected. "He won't," Kyle snapped immediately. "He doesn't." He stopped himself. "Exactly." Lisa stepped closer, lowering her voice as if the volume was the problem. "You're embarrassing us," she said. "This looks petty." "No," I replied. "It looks accurate." The second tremor came later that afternoon. An email from the insurance provider confirming termination of the secondary coverage. Kyle's Sports Academy portal flagged his account as unpaid. By evening, his debit card, linked to the credit line I controlled, was declined at a gas station. He called Lisa first, not me. I watched her pace the living room, whispering urgently into the phone. "Just come home," she said. When he walked through the door, there was no smirk this time. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. I didn't raise my voice. I stepped out of the system I was holding up. Lisa looked at me like I'd spoken another language. "You're punishing him," she said. "No," I answered. "I'm aligning responsibility with authority." Kyle stared at me, anger mixing with something new, unease. "You're ruining things over one comment?" "It wasn't one comment," I said quietly. "It was a position. For 10 years, I had absorbed every subtle dismissal. Every mom's husband. Every exclusion from decisions I financed. I told myself patience would earn permanence. Instead, permanence turned into presumption. By the third day, the mood in the house shifted from irritation to calculation. Calls were made. Emails sent. Deadlines reviewed. Numbers finally were visible. Lisa sat at the dining table with a notebook, trying to reconstruct expenses she had never tracked personally. Mortgage due dates, utility breakdowns, academy fees. For the first time, she looked overwhelmed. "This is extreme," she whispered. "No," I said. "This is proportionate." Kyle avoided eye contact now. The confidence that came from unlimited backing had cracked. He checked his phone repeatedly, as if waiting for invisible money to reappear. I didn't gloat. I didn't argue. I simply stopped carrying what I had been told wasn't mine to carry. On the fourth night, Lisa tried a softer tone. "He didn't mean it," she said from the bedroom doorway. "You know that." I looked up from the documents I was organizing, statements, confirmations, legal filings dissolving the civil partnership we had arranged years ago for tax purposes. "He meant it enough to say it in front of everyone," I replied. She didn't have an answer. I filed the final paperwork the next morning. Everything clean. Everything documented. I didn't break anything. I withdrew. And as the infrastructure quietly shut down around them, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not rage. not revenge. Relief. For the first time in 10 years, my role matched my title. Nothing more. Nothing less. The accusations came first. They always do. You're embarrassing us. You're being vindictive. It was just words. Lisa delivered them in cycles. Anger first, then disbelief, then something that tried to resemble moral superiority. She stood in the kitchen with her arms folded like she was defending something sacred. Not me. Not the marriage. Kyle. Kyle didn't shout as much anymore. The arrogance had thinned. It had been easy for him to mock the machine while it was running. It's different when the lights flicker. You're overreacting, he said the third night after the payments stopped. Normal people don't blow up their families over one sentence. I looked at him steadily. Normal families don't tell the provider he has no vote, I replied. That ended that exchange. But tension doesn't disappear. Condenses. The school sent another notice. Payment deadline final. Sports academy access suspended. Insurance confirmation arrived by mail. Official. Stamped. Unemotional. Numbers have a way of stripping pride. Lisa began making calls to her ex-husband. I heard fragments through the hallway. You need to step up. This isn't fair. He can't just do this. The irony almost made me laugh. For years I had stepped up. Quietly. Completely. Now fairness was being invoked because the burden was shifting back to its original owner. Kyle's father promised to see what he could do. That was his specialty. Vague intention. No follow-through. By the end of the week, reality became practical. Lisa sat at the dining table with bills spread out like a map of unfamiliar territory. Mortgage due in 12 days. Utilities in 9. Tuition reinstatement required immediate lump sum. Insurance replacement quote significantly higher. For the first time in 10 years, she was doing math. You're going to tank all of us? She muttered without looking at me. No, I answered calmly. I'm removing myself. Kyle paced the hallway that night. I could hear the pattern of his steps. Back and forth. Back and forth. The rhythm of someone realizing dependency is not the same as entitlement. He knocked on my office door around midnight. I expected anger. I got something else. This isn't funny anymore, he said quietly. I never thought it was. He hesitated. I have practice next week. They won't let me play if the account's suspended. That's unfortunate. His jaw tightened. You know I can't ask him for that kind of money. You made it clear he's your father. Silence. There it was, the corner he had painted himself into. He didn't apologize. Not yet. Pride doesn't collapse that quickly. But the edge in his voice was gone. The next morning I began packing. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Methodically. Tools first. My tool chest from the garage. The one I used to repair everything in that house. Then personal documents. Tax returns. Contracts, certifications. Bank statements. Passport. I moved quietly. Lisa noticed by the third box. What are you doing? She asked, voice tight. Preparing. For what? For the logical next step. Her face shifted from anger to alarm. You can't just leave. Why not? I asked calmly. I have no vote here. That hurt her more than yelling would have. You're blowing up a decade, she said. No, I corrected. I'm stepping out of it. Kyle stood in the hallway watching us. Not smirking now. Not confident. Just uncertain. You're really going to run? He asked. I met his eyes. I'm not running. I'm refusing to fund my own dismissal. The civil partnership dissolution paperwork had already been filed earlier in the week. Clean. Legal. Efficient. We had arranged it years ago for tax benefits. It had functioned like everything else in this house. Practical, not emotional. Now it was gone. By the 7th day, the house felt different. Less like a home. More like a structure adjusting to missing support beams. Lisa tried one final tactic that evening. Softer voice. Slower pace. Kyle didn't mean it the way it sounded, she said from across the kitchen counter. He was embarrassed. Showing off. For 10 years. I asked. She didn't answer. Kyle stood behind her, staring at the floor. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lecture. I reminded you both of something simple, I said evenly. If I don't get a vote, I don't carry responsibility. Authority and obligation are tied together. Kyle finally looked up. So that's it? He asked. You just stop caring? I studied him carefully. No, I said. I stopped confusing care with tolerance for disrespect. That landed. A week after the cookout, I loaded the last of my boxes into the back of my truck. I had signed a lease on a small apartment in Nevada, closer to work. Smaller space, no pool, no palm trees, no imbalance. Lisa stood in the driveway, arms wrapped around herself. She looked less angry now, more unsettled. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. Maybe, I replied, but at least it's mine. Kyle hovered near the garage door. He didn't mock me, didn't roll his eyes. You're serious, he said. I always was. I walked back inside one last time. The house was quiet, echoing slightly now that my office shelves were bare. On the kitchen counter, I left copies of everything. Civil partnership dissolution documents, confirmation of terminated payments, account separation statements. On top, a single sheet of paper. 3 words. Now it's fair. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't speed away. I didn't look back. The house remained with them. So did the obligations. And as the Arizona sun burned down on the driveway, I felt something settle inside me that had been missing for years. Alignment, not revenge, not victory, consequence. For the first time, the structure matched the truth. And the truth was simple. They had already decided who I was. I had just finally agreed. I live alone now. Small apartment, 2nd floor. Beige walls that don't pretend to be anything more than walls. No pool reflecting light onto the ceiling. No echo of other people's footsteps in the hallway. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic that doesn't belong to me. The first night here, I slept without interruption. No tension in the air. No arguments behind closed doors. No feeling that I was financing my own erasure. Silence, when it isn't hostile, is a gift. I unpacked slowly. Tools first. Then documents. Then the few personal things I'd almost forgotten were mine. Framed photos from before Lisa, old notebooks, a watch my father gave me years ago. Objects that existed before I became infrastructure. The phone rang 3 days after I moved. Lisa. I let it go to voicemail the first time. Not out of spite. Out of discipline. The message was short. Controlled. We need to talk. Need. That word sounded different now. She called again the next evening. This time, her voice wasn't controlled. They're asking about the mortgage, she said immediately. No greeting. No softness. The account hasn't been funded. I removed my auto transfer. I replied evenly. You can't just disappear like this. I didn't disappear, I said. I stepped out of obligations I was told weren't mine. Silence on the line. Then a breath that sounded like frustration collapsing into fatigue. Kyle's father can't cover tuition, she said quietly. He says he doesn't have it. I assumed that. There it was again, the structure revealing itself without my support. He might lose his spot, she added. I leaned back against the kitchen counter of my apartment, staring at nothing in particular. I was told I don't get a vote, I said. That includes outcomes. She didn't yell this time. She didn't accuse. She said something else. You're hurting him. I closed my eyes for a moment. No, I answered calmly. His expectations are hurting him. That ended the call. Kyle texted me 2 days later. Not an apology. Not at first. You really moved? Yes. A pause. Then another message. Mom's stressed. I stared at the screen. I was stressed for years. I typed back. Then erased it. Replaced it with something cleaner. Stress follows imbalance. He didn't respond for several minutes. When he did, it was different. I didn't think you'd actually leave. That was honest. That's the problem, I replied, because that was the core of it. They believed I was permanent no matter how I was treated. That provision was automatic. That endurance was infinite. I had mistaken durability for dignity. Weeks passed. The mortgage became solely Lisa's responsibility. She refinanced under less favorable terms. The insurance premium increased without my bundled coverage. The sports academy quietly replaced Kyle's spot when payment deadlines passed. Reality is not loud. It's procedural. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Kyle transferred to a public school. Not catastrophic. Just different. Less prestige. Fewer advantages. No one starved. No one ended up on the street. The world did not collapse. It simply recalibrated. Lisa called again one evening, nearly a month after I left. Her voice sounded older. "He asked about you," she said. I waited. "He said he understands now." Understands what? That you were carrying more than he realized. I let that settle. Understanding after consequence is not the same as respect before it. "Is that an apology?" I asked. "He's not good with words." "He was clear enough at the cookout." She exhaled sharply. "You're not perfect either, Daniel. I never claimed to be. That was the difference. I never claimed ownership of something that wasn't mine. They claimed entitlement to something they rejected." After we hung up, I sat in the dim light of my apartment and replayed that sentence from the cookout again. You don't get a vote. It didn't start that night. It ended that night. Because the truth is, betrayal rarely arrives dramatically. It accumulates quietly. It settles into routine. It hides inside jokes and dismissals and silence. And one day it speaks plainly. When someone tells you who you are to them, believe it. I don't wish them harm. I don't wake up angry. But I no longer confuse sacrifice with love, or endurance with virtue. There's a difference between providing stability and volunteering for erasure. Sometimes I wonder if Kyle will fully connect the dots. If he'll realize that respect isn't sentimental, it's structural. That authority and responsibility move together. That you cannot deny one and expect the other to remain. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. Lisa hasn't asked me to come back. Not directly. The subtext lingers, but the words haven't formed. I think she knows that if I returned without conditions, nothing fundamental would change. And I refuse to resume a role defined by dismissal. I walk through my apartment now without feeling like a guest in my own life. My money goes where my voice exists. My time goes where my presence is acknowledged. It's quieter, simpler, honest. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to that cookout. The blue water of the pool. The smell of grilled meat. The casual tone in Lisa's voice. The smirk on Kyle's face. That was the moment clarity arrived. Not paperwork. Not canceled payments. Not packed boxes. A sentence. They told me exactly who I was to them. The smart thing was believing it. So I did. Now I ask you something simple. Was I wrong to step away when respect was denied?